Okay.
I think you're just running the sound. It says.
Or is that? And that's like a key to this. Yeah, but for Unity, we do something different. I did.
Okay. Laptops away. Notes out. Line paper out. Ready to go with notes. Go, 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 go. I will do the, I'm going to hand it back in the second half. I'll ask you to do an exercise as well in terms of approving the next one. The general feedback was people kind of like that one rather than doing a larger test. So if we can adjust a version of it for a utilitarian deontology one that kind of combines it together, that'd be useful. I'm going to ask for your help in that. But we're going to start the next section, which is on consent. Now, we normally talk in a biomedical context, but it's true in every context.
I look my notebook like at home, so can I please like write on what to do and real later?
Sure. Can you borrow a piece of paper off someone? There you go. I'm also going to give you a chance to tell me everything Brentwood has told you about consent. Has everybody here been through the like Health 9 and 10 in some place and been told about consent? Has anybody not? Excellent. Number 1, consent must be informed. When you sign the documents at the beginning of the year, well, you sign them virtually because you click OK and you say that you've read the entire school handbook. Because we want you to be informed and we have to know that you've actually read it. How many of you have read the entire school handbook? Excellent. Some of you have. Well done, well done, well done. Those of you who haven't, if you ever find yourself in Mr. Sullivan's office for not good reasons, one of the first questions he will ask is, have you read the school handbook on this section that applies to this? And then when you say no, he'll say, you should have. But also there's some responsibility on the people presenting the information to actually give you that information, make sure you do it. You say that you have done it, which is our way of saying that, oh, they must have because they said they did, and if they didn't, it's their fault. But did you really? Especially when we know that people aren't. Also must be voluntary. If I hold a gun to your head and I say, sign this document, is that document binding? No, you had a choice, but it wasn't a voluntary choice you were forced against your will. But this comes up in a lot of different ways, because what does voluntary really mean? How much do you have to be pressured for it not to be voluntary anymore? Whether you're talking about consent in the way that you get taught to in health class, or you're talking about it in ethics, they're the same type of consent. And then you have to be competent. So all of you are not competent to sign a legal document. You can't purchase a house, you can't rent a car, you can't even sign your own forms that you did to go to the school. The only reason we have you do that is to show that we did our due diligence in presenting it to you. But you can opt out at any time. As I've said multiple times, you have signed a form that says that you are willing to be drug tested at any moment, at any time, any day, by any by any member of staff if they so desire. You gave away a lot of rights in that moment, but you can reclaim them instantly because you were not competent to do that. You can say, no, I do not let you. I do not want to give the drug test. And they would have no choice to say, okay, we're not allowed to give you one. What would happen at that point? Yes?
They'd probably kick you out of the school.
Well, we wouldn't kick you out.
But it's like they just
Yeah, you've
do
just
the drug test, so you're out of the school.
you would just like, well, you no longer want to abide by our rules, so you are choosing to leave. So we're not kicking you out. You're just choosing not to be here. Choose to be. Hashtag. Also, there's the school, just to allay any particular fears. We don't go around randomly drug testing students on a regular any kind of basis that I can recall. It's there in case it was for some reason needed. And I know there are some schools that do that. They'll call up random students to their version of the health center and test them on a semi-regular basis. We don't do that. It happens to be there in the clause in case for some reason we had to drug test someone, something happened after an event and we wanted to. Usually the most useful way to prove that you're innocent, the fastest way is to say, oh, I'll do a drug test, and then we don't have to worry about it. This is also a right. It's not a duty. You don't have to do this. If you don't care about being informed, if the doctor is telling you stuff and you're like, yeah, I've heard this all before, then it's your right to say, I'm just saying yes. I don't care what the risks are. Stop telling me.
So can we ask to be drug tested if we want to prove that we did not do something?
You could. That's not in there as a right. You can't ask to be drug tested, but certainly you're free to do your own drug test if it ever came up and it could prove your innocence. I can't imagine a scenario in which you were accused of doing something bad that drug testing would eliminate you as someone who did that, in which anybody would say no. But it's not theoretically something that they would have to do. And I definitely know of schools with like zero tolerance policies, where if you get caught in that kind of red tape, well, they'll just say, no, you're just, this happened, we suspected you, were fall afoul of the rules, you are now expelled, and you're like, I'm willing to do a drug test. They're like, we don't care anymore, it's done. There is a prosecutor in the States a few years ago who made headlines because they had put a murderer behind bars, and she successfully prosecuted it. It was the case that actually, I think, elevated her to state prosecutor. A very famous case. It turns out that person was innocent. Nothing she did was wrong. She did the entire case correctly, but the evidence itself was mistaken. And so when they DNA tested it, the DNA test wasn't done properly. It gave a false positive. And so when they learned that, they're like, well, this either has to be retried or that person has to go free. And she argued that the presence of innocent does not have to undo a guilty verdict because they were made guilty in due process. So why undo that? From her biased perspective, if you undo one of her cases, that actually reflects poorly on her. So there's a bias there for her to keep that in. And that's not actually something in law, but you can see how people get to that way. Nobody's done anything wrong, why should we undo something? Here, I don't think you'd be caught up in that. Was a question over there? Yep?
Doesn't Brentwood say that they're a non-tolerance school?
No, zero tolerance. Zero tolerance policies isn't the same as saying zero. You're not supposed to be on any drugs. So yes, zero, but not that kind of zero. Zero tolerance means if you do it, there is one punishment and that's it. You don't get a second chance. So there was a case of an elementary school that was part of a larger school, and they had a zero tolerance policy for weapons. And a new transferred student, I think he was in grade 2 or 3, came in, he took out his lunch, he got out his penknife, and he started carving his apple like he always does to eat the apple chunks. And his teacher saw him with a knife, and he was expelled from the school. And the parents tried to argue that, it was a penknife, he's always done this, it's a mistake, he won't do it again, and they're like, no, it's a zero tolerance policy. Doesn't matter the reason, they're expelled. So that's what a zero tolerance means in education. Whereas here, people sometimes go away, but then they come back, or you see them working around the school. We have lots of exceptions. And if you or your friends are having trouble with any particular substances, you have all been spoken to by your house parents about the health center option. Nobody's nodding. No? Shake your heads if you've never heard of it. It's a way to not get expelled. If you go to the health center and you're like, I don't know what to tell you, man. I do a lot of heroin. I need to get off the heroin. It's a real health problem. I think my friends are telling me it's a problem. I need help getting off of heroin. You are not expelled for doing heroin at the school if you go to the health center and say that. What they will do, and I mean they have to, in order to get the amount of help you need with that, they'll tell your parents, they'll put you on a drug contract, they'll give you the counseling, they'll make sure you get the counseling you need, you get to stay in school, and you get resources to help you with your heroin problem. But you're not instantly expelled. Now that being said, if you are extremely drunk and you show up to the health center because you're like, if I go sign in now, I'm totally going to get caught, and you go to the health center drunk and said, I need help with alcohol, you are still going to face your suspension or expulsion. Right? You have to show up to the health center unimpaired, so you can't show up drunk or high. But if you go down, you can also do it on behalf of your friends. So if you can, sometimes you can see the train wreck that is coming. They are going to get expelled if they keep going. You go to the health center and you say, so and so, my best friend, is doing all of this. I would really like to get them help. And the health center will go to them and say, there's been a concern. They're not going to reveal your name, but they say you really need help. Do you really? And they will put it to them as strong as way possible. They can always say no. They're not going to get expelled because you said that. But you might prevent something. If they get expelled after that, it's just because they got caught, whatever they're doing. But most people eventually get caught when they're on that kind of a road. So, Brentwood has a lot of things built in so that if you need help, you can get help. We don't want to kick people out.
For example, when someone like hides like a drug in the room,
Yeah.
then they say, oh, I think, like, tell the house parent, oh, search the room, I think there is something. And then you say, oh, can I take a like drug test to prove that it's not mine?
But that might be.
Then
That doesn't get you out of selling drugs to grade 8s, though. How dare you? How dare you? So, I mean, if you find drugs, I mean, now you're talking about levels of evidence. We found the drugs, they're in your backpack. We have 3 grade 8s and 2 grade 7s from the local elementary school who all say that you were up at the Thrifty's parking lot selling it. You don't do it because you don't get high in your own supply. Well done, good business sense. But that may not get you out of that part of it. Or if something is found in your room, you're like, that's not mine, it's my roommate. Drug test me. And the roommate is like, no, I don't want to be drug tested. Then Mr. Sullivan is going to very quickly see what's going on there. So yeah, that could easily work in that case. So informed, they have to know what they're getting into. We've discussed this as a school, and just in terms of, do you know what you're getting into when you sign up for Brentwood? You're, running to your fine art, your sport, all your academics. It's difficult to say that necessarily that you do. We do tour year round. Mr. Johnson says he informs everybody very well about what they're getting into. But there's a lot here that you just have to experience to find out. But also, we're not a prison. You can leave. You don't need a helicopter to escape, as the one student did. You could just say, I would like to go now. It has to be not coerced.
Mr. Duke,
Yeah.
has anyone ever been picked up by a helicopter before?
Yeah, I told you. Didn't I tell it? I was referencing an old story. Yeah, boy ran away from his house. His brother owned a helicopter company up in Whistler, so he just came down in this helicopter and landed. It was a field where the foot now stands. Just where the turf is. That was a much larger field. At one point, it was just grass. He landed in there, and the guy threw his backpack on and got in the helicopter. We could have arranged a cab for you. Like, if your parents ask, you're allowed to go home. If you're like, I want to skip school and not write any tests, and we're like, you can't have leave. You've got all this stuff coming up. It's not a wedding. It's not a funeral. It's not an emergency. It's not compassionate. And your parents say, I don't care. I want my child home. Then you get to go home. You're not kidnapped here. You can go home. There's no obligation on part of the teachers to make sure you're caught up because you decided to miss it, but you're here on purpose. You don't have to escape via helicopter. That was also a very long time ago, like 30 years ago, a long time ago. Competent. So like, not drunk. Not a child. Not suffering. For mental health issues. A long time ago, I had this boy in the house, and he was like, I'm going to get this. He kept talking about this bike he wanted, a special bike. Very light, had some things on it that made it especially light. It was too expensive. He knew it was too expensive. It was too expensive. But I'll get it at break. I'll get it at break. I'm like, is your birthday coming? He goes, no, but my dad will be home. Oh, so your dad just likes to buy you things? No. But when he gets really drunk, I can get him to buy it online. And afterwards, he's too embarrassed to send it back. That child has already learned how to bypass consent on their parents. It's like, I don't know. It was diabolical. I did suggest that maybe he not do that. You don't understand, Mr. Newfeld. This is just how it works in my family. My mom does it too. Okay. I'm going to stop this from recording because, of course, if you type consent into the internet, all you get is a ton of health center style consents. Some of them are useful, so I copied some of them. Hold it. There it is. I'll just shut it off so I don't get copyright strike by TikTok or anybody else.